week I pitted the GoPro Hero 12 against the DJI Osmo Action 4 to see which was the better action camera for mountain bike use. But these aren't the only action cameras on the market. There's one other major brand that makes some pretty unique cameras. And of course the other brand is Insta360. They've just updated their 360 camera and they recently brought out their new dedicated action camera. They're very different and do different things, but I'm going to pitch these against each other and see how they fare as a mountain bike action camera. With their different functions and different form factors, before you even start filming, there's quite a few pros and cons with these cameras. So like with the GoPro and the DJI, I'm just going to take you through my pros and cons that I've found with these cameras, and then I'm going to take them out on the bike and compare the footage. So what are these pros and cons? Let's start with the X4 as it's the more unique of the two. The first pro is that this is essentially two cameras in one. Now obviously it's advertised as a 360 camera, but it does offer single lens mode too, so it essentially performs like a normal action camera. But if you do choose to use this as a 360 camera, you're going to get some interesting features you won't find on a usual action camera, like the ability to pick your angle afterwards and even film forwards and backwards if attached to the top of your helmet. A great option if you're in the middle of a group of riders and you want to make sure you don't miss anything. It's also a great option for road riding as you'll have a 360 view of any accidents that hopefully won't happen. Outside of these points, the 360 mode can give you really cool effects like a tiny planet and bullet time. But more useful is the ability to transform the field of view practically as wide as you want in the editing process and in horizontal or vertical format. Essentially, you have a lot of freedom in how your footage looks, more so than any other camera. The X4 now films 360 footage in 8K too, because of the two 4K lenses, so you can export your footage in 4K, which is a big improvement over the last X3 model. As mentioned, 360 footage isn't its only trick. It's easy to swap into single frame mode and then it performs like a fairly standard action camera, only with the benefit of a backup lens in case you manage to damage one. I feel Insta360 has some of the best image stability of any camera, and the X4 seems to take this to another level. I'll be putting this to the test, but first impressions are very impressive. Another bonus is this camera is similar to the DJI in that it keeps the battery and SD card under the same door. This allows the USB port to be under one door, and when you add accessories, it means there's no chance of getting moisture into the heart of the camera. Speaking of doors, the USB door is easy to open with one hand, and the battery door is fairly easy to open too, although maybe slightly harder with gloves, but it is extremely satisfying to shut. Another pro is that if you remove the USB door, you can fit Insta360's mic adapter. Now this, like the DJI, clips in, uses the hardware of the door itself, and is actually a really secure fit. I love adapters like this as it just gives such a secure connection and it's much less likely that you're going to have audio issues. Plus this is a really slim adapter, so if you are using 360 mode, it's going to be hidden and you won't be able to see it at all. When you add a mic, you get an audible beep. A little mic symbol comes up, plus you get audio levels across the top. And I love it when cameras make it really obvious that a mic is connected and working. It's not all good though. This camera certainly has its compromises and design flaws. Firstly, and it's a biggie, is its mounting options. It only has a female quarter thread on the bottom. That's it. No GoPro style mount, no magnetic mount, and possibly my most disliked aspect, no easy way to mount it horizontally. There's no getting around that this is a tall camera, and in some instances, it would definitely be beneficial to save some space and mount it sideways. Don't get me wrong, the threaded mount has its benefits, like being really easy to fit to a tripod or Insta360's selfie stick where it's on there pretty securely. And you can actually get adapters to turn it into a GoPro style mount or magnetic mount, like this Insta360 version, which is one of the better ones I've found. It's solid, made of metal, magnetic strong, and it even comes with a lock to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. The downside is this is quite a tall unit and it's made a tall camera even taller. I'd have much preferred a GoPro style mount, or even better, a magnetic mount built into the camera itself. There's probably a reason why they haven't, but I don't know, I just think it would be way better if it did. The other bad thing about using an adapter is it now can't fit in accessories like this cage. Although Insta360 do supply this kind of protective case which does fit with this, But this protective cage just isn't going to offer the same amount of protection as a proper cage, nor the ability to add accessories. It's also a little bit fiddly to fit this adapter when out and about, as ideally you need a coin or something to tighten it up. I'm sure there's some cases for a lot of people out there where just using this adapter and using the camera vertically just isn't a problem, in which case you can probably ignore a lot of my complaints here. But if, like me, you want to save some space and run this horizontally, how on earth are you going to do that? Well, this adapter is one way. Again, it just uses the threads to screw in. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's actually not too bad. And once on by hand, it's on there fairly securely. That then gives you a quarter thread or GoPro style mounts, and then you can mount that horizontally. There is a but though. If you run the adapter on this side, then you're completely blocking your on-off button. And if you run it on this side, you're completely blocking your battery. So if you end up running out of battery, you're going to have to take this all off and then you can replace it, which isn't the end of the world, but it is fiddly and I'd rather not have to undo anything to do that. But my biggest issue with this adapter is if you do run it on the battery side, which is the better side to run it on, you're then blocking the USB-C port, so you can't run any accessories. So you can't run that mic adapter I showed you, and Insta360 also do a quick card reader which goes into that slot, so you can't run either of those with this adapter. Even things like Insta360's wind muffs, which stick on over the mics at the top just to reduce wind noise, won't work with this adapter. So yeah, this is absolutely useless in my opinion. But all is not lost. I mentioned this cage earlier. This one's made by Pytech and is available on the Insta360 store, so it's recommended by them, and the camera fits into this nicely. Not only do you get GoPro and threaded mount at the bottom, but you've also got threaded mounts on either side, plus you still have access to the accessory door. Now in an ideal world, I'd actually have the lens going in the other way so it's directly above the mounts. However, this way around, it simply doesn't fit. I don't know whether the camera isn't quite symmetrical or what's going on, but yeah, it doesn't fit this way around, which is really frustrating. Plus, even if it did, then you're going to have trouble fitting any accessories to this as well. So how are you going to run it horizontally like this? Well, not only does it have threaded mounts, it also has a cold shoe mount for a mic, and I actually think that's going to be a better mounting option. I got this cold shoe to GoPro adapter, and with that fitted, it's actually in there pretty securely. And this way there's no way the camera can twist, and it's going to be pretty solid. It's not ideal though, as the lens is all the way over to the side. I don't know what it will look like having the lens a few inches away from the mounting point, but in my head it's going to look a little bit weird. I would much prefer it if the mounts were directly under the lens, just so that everything is absolutely centered. I guess I'm just really disappointed that there isn't an easy way to run this camera horizontally. There's definitely benefits for it, and it seems like such an obvious thing and quite an easy thing that they could have incorporated. Okay, maybe they couldn't put a mount up near the top because that's where the mics are, etc. But on the battery door, there seems to be space there. They could have a GoPro style mount or maybe even a magnetic mount. And it would just make life so much easier. I used to have an X3, which is the model before this one, and when I ran that the normal way up, if I ran it on my chin, I would often hit it on my handlebars. And if I ran it on my chest, if I was going down a steep trail, I'd actually hit this on my saddle. I used to run this cage with the X3, but unfortunately the X4 is a bigger camera and simply won't fit inside. But this was still a bit of a bodge. I did manage to get the mounts directly under the lens, but that was only if I ran the camera the wrong way around. And when I did, none of the holes lined up. And even though I didn't use any accessories with that camera, there was no chance I could have anyway. So yeah, come on Insta360, please just make life a lot easier to run this camera sideways. The next bad point is the price. This is not a cheap camera. And while it does come with a couple of accessories, it doesn't come with spare batteries or a cage, in the package I bought anyway. The standard bundle, cameras and standard lens guards, costs £500. The bike bundle, which adds a selfie stick, chest mount, handlebar mount, as well as the standard lens guards, will set you back £590. If you want extra batteries, then they're going to be £50 each. Yeah, 50 quid. And if you're going to get those, you probably want to make life easier by using a multi-charger, and that's another 50 quid. Add the audio adapter for 20, the cage for 60, and magnetic mount adapter for 40, and you've sunk 860 quid. And that's not even counting the add-ons like warranty extender or protective care. This is an extremely expensive bit of kit. If the price hasn't put you off, then the next bad point might be the final straw. The lenses are non-replaceable, and with it being a 360 camera, they stick out and are more exposed. Fortunately, Insta360 supply clip-on lens covers, and these are a great improvement over the aftermarket stick-on ones you had to use with the X3, and these are vital, as no matter how hard you try, you will scratch and mark them. I'm actually already on my second pair of lens covers, even before I've started riding. These protectors would definitely help against smaller scratches, but I don't think they're going to survive a big crash, and if you do damage the main lenses, it's going to be an expensive repair. I actually got a 360 camera from a now defunct brand, and on my first ride I chipped the lens and the camera was useless after that. So it's definitely a concern having something so fragile and non-replaceable on such an expensive item. It is possible just to stand this camera up, but most of the time you're probably going to be laying it down, and yeah, the first thing it's going to be touching are the lenses. So I do recommend getting a protective bag or case just to make the camera last a little bit longer. Those are the two most serious negatives, but there's a couple of little niggly ones too. Like when you're in single lens mode, you can't swap lens while you're filming. You can pick which lens you want before recording, but as soon as you start, that option goes away and you're stuck with whatever lens you chose. It's frustrating if you're filming something and then you want to turn it around to talk to camera, you no longer have the screen. It would be such a great feature if you could swap the lens while recording. I was kind of hoping that maybe they would have fixed that for the X4 because the X3 didn't have this option too. Maybe they can fix this with a firmware update, but they never did with the X3, so I'm not holding my breath with the X4 either. The other frustrating thing is the kind of form factor of the camera. Firstly, the big screen is great, but as you grip the camera, you're going to get prints all over it. It is the hardest thing to keep clean. Secondly, if you're gripping it quite firmly, either to put a different mount on or an adapter, it's quite easy to press the buttons on the side. And it's not just the side buttons I've accidentally pressed. I've had this in my bag while I've been filming with the Ace Pro, and I've pushed it in there and it must have pressed against stuff, and I've had some accidental recordings with this. I'm not too sure what they could do about this, maybe make the buttons harder to press or have a button to just disable them, I don't know, but yeah, I have had some accidental button presses, recordings with this camera, and it is a little bit frustrating. And I'm not finished yet. Editing the footage isn't exactly hard, but 360 and free frame mode does have extra steps before you can get it into a YouTube video. Insta360 do offer a studio editor, which I have, but I haven't quite gelled with it, especially with 360 footage. I much prefer their app, which is one of, if not the best action camera app I've used. If you're wanting to just get footage from the camera onto your phone, then using the app is actually really easy and potentially quite fun as well. The app is definitely more intuitive than the studio. Because I use an iPhone and a Mac, I tend to use the app just to trim and edit footage and then use AirDrop to get it onto my computer. On the app, reframing can be done by adding frame markers, telling the camera where to look throughout a clip, but I find this tedious and the end result a bit robotic. The other option is to watch the clip back and just point your phone where you want the camera to look. It can take a bit of practice, and on longer clips it can be extremely frustrating if you make a mistake towards the end, but I find the end result looks better even if you looked a little crazy during the process. While doing this, it is also possible to adjust the field of view. Now, I find this a bit sensitive with a delay, and my coordination is seemingly a bit crap. But if you're good at mobile games, you'll probably enjoy this process. Once done, you can also choose your aspect ratio and then export it. Like I said, a little bit more of an effort than simply exporting footage from an SD card straight onto your editor of choice. Lastly, I'm sure the low light performance will be better than my old X3, but I don't think this will match the DJI or fellow Insta360 camera, the Ace Pro. Speaking of, what are the pros and cons of the Ace Pro? Firstly, this is made in conjunction with Leica, so you know there's some quality glass in there, which should help with overall image quality. We'll soon find out if that's true. This camera also has a fold-out screen too, which makes life a lot easier to check your angles if the camera's low down, and a great vlogging screen if you're in front of it. Options, lots of options. This camera can film in 8K, it has low light modes, reframe modes, where you can choose vertical or horizontal from the same clip, HDR, plus all your standard modes like slow-mo or hyperlapse, etc, etc. It also has a couple of neat features like being able to pause filming. Very handy if you're taking a breather down a trail or waiting for someone to reset when filming a clip. and it looks like you can even adjust your settings while you're paused. It turns your recorded parts into a single clip, saving time in the editing. Likewise, it also has the option to delete a clip, which also saves space on the SD card and time when editing. I wish all cameras had these features. I also love how this camera has magnetic mounts. Like I said with the DJI Action 4, I wasn't convinced at first, but having used them for a while, I love how easy it is to swap the camera from helmet to chest to selfie stick, and now I couldn't live without it. Likewise, the audio adapter is great too. Like the DJI and X4, this also replaces the door and just clips into place using its hardware. With a mic fitted, you get a clear indication that it is fitted and working, with the bar at the top showing your volume levels. So like the DJI Action 4, the Ace Pro makes an excellent vlogging camera. The audio adapter has a pass-through USB-C port, so by using this battery handle, I can charge the camera, I can get good audio, and with this rig, it's small, lightweight, and it will last all day. Another plus point of this camera, which I really want to test, is the low light ability. Because it has a larger sensor than the latest GoPro, it's actually the same size as DJI Action 4, but this one has some intelligent software specially developed to improve low light performance, and I've heard some pretty good things. Another potential plus point, but a feature I've not really used, is a zoom feature. By pressing a button, it will zoom in 2 times, but this is digital and I'm not sure if it works in any format other than 8K. The price is kind of reasonable too, especially compared with the X4. A standard package, camera, battery, plus a couple of adapters, is currently £380. I've added a couple of spare batteries at £36 each and a vertical adapter at £20. More on this in a bit. But like all cameras, there are some cons. Firstly, and this is quite a big con, the lens isn't replaceable. And that's a huge shame, as breaking or even scratching the glass can be done fairly easily if you crash or don't look after the camera. Insta360 can replace and offer a 1-year free replacement, minus postage, but outside a year you'll have to pay for a replacement and postage. I'd recommend getting some screen protectors just to be on the safe side. Secondly, and there seems to be a bit of a theme with all action cameras that I've tried recently, there's no vertical mount. With the reframe option, it's kind of possible to film vertically with the camera still horizontal, but it's nice to have access to every feature available by just running the camera vertically. Insta360 do offer a vertical adapter, which I just shown, but I don't understand why they can't just design this into the camera in the first place. This adapter adds weight and size to the camera, plus it's another thing you've got to remember to bring with you, and there's the extra costs of it too. Come on brands, just add a vertical mount. Moving inside the camera, the 8K mode doesn't come with the widest field of view. I think this will be too tight for usable mountain bike footage. It's a shame because the 4K mode is noticeably wider. It would be awesome to try and get some 8K footage, but not at the cost of being too tight. Now this is something I had as a pro, but I'm also going to use it as a con. The flip screen. It's good, but it's also tedious when using the camera as a vlogging rig. Sure, having a big screen is handy, but you need to physically unlock it and flip it up. This is possible to do one-handed, but it won't be a smooth transition and something that would need to be edited out of the final video. Other cameras have smaller screens, but they're still good enough to confirm the framing is good. Plus, you can do a smooth spin of the camera that won't necessarily need to be edited out. The flip screen is also a moving part that has potential to fail. Lastly, I'm annoyed the Ace Pro keeps the SD card in the same door as the USB port. It's still better than GoPro having everything under one door, but not as good as the X4 or DJI. This is close but no cigar. I kind of feel if I was using an audio adapter, then it maybe started to rain, drizzle, however you get moisture onto a camera, I've got more chance of getting it onto the SD card by having it under this door than I do by having it under the battery door. And speaking of the battery door, it's not as easy to open as others. Probably about the same as a GoPro. I have to use the side of my hand because I bite my fingernails. This might be tricky to do in a cold, wet, or with gloves. So those are the pros and cons of Insta360's latest cameras. They're very different cameras and I wonder how that'll translate out on the bike. So let's go out and see how they look. I've returned to the 30-second trail here at the very green Catkin Braes just south of Glasgow. It turns out I'm quite consistent at this trail, which is great for testing cameras because if a clip looks faster than another clip, then it's down to the camera. I'm going to start this test like I did last time with the cameras on the chin mount of my full face helmet, and then I'll move on to the chest mount. As you can see, the X4 does hang very, very low, and I've got a feeling it's either hit me in the chest or hit my handlebars. If that happens, then I will try and turn the camera horizontal just to save a little bit of space. But yeah, let's just jump straight into this. Going to do a standard test, horizontal test, vertical test. You know the drill. I'll let you know what's going on. But yeah, hop on the bike, send it down the trail. Okay, so I've got these cameras as close as I can get them, both on the chin, both recording 4K 25 frames a second, and I've both got HDR off. Now, even before I've set off riding, if I move my head down, that is the X4 touching me in the chest. Now, I probably won't get into this position while I'm riding, but yeah, there's definitely some restriction in movement there. Hopefully I've got them pointed in the right direction. Let's set off and we'll soon find out, I guess. A new thing you have to look out for with the X4 is whether you choose the correct lens or not in single lens mode. I did not, and I got a lovely shot of my chest going down that trail. So I'm going to have to do it again, and this time I will have the lens pointing forwards. So there's definitely, well, I was going to say some learning to do with this, but if you're smart, you'll probably get it right first try. Now, one thing I did notice is there's no options that I can see to add or reduce wind noise reduction. So both these cameras are just recording raw audio at the minute. We'll have to just see what the wind sounds like. Oh, and before I set off, this mode with the X4 on the single lens mode, just running 4K, it is as close to a standard action camera as you can get. In this mode, I won't actually have to use any apps. I could probably just use the SD card into my computer, get the files off and edit them just like any normal camera. So this is the easiest mode that you could use the X4 in. But does it look any good? Does the Ace Pro look any good in this mode? We'll soon find out. How's it sounding? I'm a bit rusty on this trail, having not ridden it since I was last here. Oh, got a bit skitty on that one. But I was going to say it's a bit dry today, not slippery, but I still went wide in that corner. Whew. I'm going to do this again. I've actually not changed anything on the X4 other than I've moved it onto the flat color profile. The Ace Pro is also on a flat color profile. Now, these cameras are by the same manufacturer. They probably have exactly the same flat color profiles. So this isn't really a comparison between the two, which is one's better because it's probably going to be the same. But yeah, let's see what these cameras are like once I've done a bit of color correcting. The other change I've done, which you probably noticed, this camera, the Ace Pro, is probably going to be a little bit tighter framed because it's now on 8K. Like I said in the pros and cons, really cool to have an 8K option, but how usable is it? Let's find out. I thought I was going to slide out then. What? I think I hit my camera on the handlebar then. Right. Just have to see what that looks like in the editing. We've got changes over here. So the previous mode, just a standard filming mode on both cameras, probably isn't how I would use them. The 360 camera in that mode, like I said, is the easiest to use, but I think it has the worst footage. Certainly it's the least adjustable footage. So now both cameras are on 3-frame mode. The idea of this one is that essentially being a big square, you can crop in to have either vertical footage for Reels or horizontal footage for YouTube, only if it works. As we found out with GoPro and the DJI, it's not as wide as the other settings, but I think with these cameras it's actually going to be the opposite way around. These ones could potentially be wider in this setting. And also I've got a mic on. Currently with the Ace Pro, I've hooked up with a mic. I'm going to switch between the two cameras with the mic and not. So this time the Ace Pro gets the mic. Next time I'll probably have the X4 with the mic and see if they sound the same. But yeah, let's talk. Let's go down this trail once more. Whoa, close to those trees then. Man, I cannot get that corner today. Whoa, close to those trees then. Man, I cannot get that corner today. Okay, I just did a whole spiel about going down this track, turning the cameras 90 degrees, got to the bottom, came back to the top, reviewed the footage, and I had the X4 pointing the wrong way. I got a lovely clip of my chest again. I was going to say it's the camera's fault, but actually no, it's completely my fault because I've changed the camera orientation. I've had to turn the camera the other way around. I forgot to change which lens it was filming from, so totally my fault. And I was going to say, I wish there was a really obvious thing that Insta360 could do to make sure it always films the right way, but they kind of do. They've got a great big screen. You just have to look at it and make sure it's pointing the right way. So that's completely on me, but it is worth noting that if you're used to an action camera where there is only ever one lens, it's another thing to think about because, yeah, you do have to make sure you're using the correct lens. That's tedious. The other tedious thing was I did another massive spiel basically saying exactly what I just did, except the X4 wasn't recording. I thought I'd press record, but I hadn't. So I'm having some teething issues with the X4. If you are filming a long video, make sure it's doing what you think it's doing. There's a lot more to think about. But anyway, what I said before I realized I wasn't filming, I have turned the cameras 90 degrees to film dedicated vertical footage. Previously I had it, like I said, on square formats where you could choose vertical, but until I get home, look at it on the app or on my computer, I don't know how wide that's going to be. So let's see what dedicated vertical footage looks like. Anyway, that's enough waffling. We're going to send it down here. Like I said, vertical footage. Both cameras are back onto the 4K standard setting like we did at the start of the video. I've got my audio coming out of the X4, and yeah, let's see how this looks for your Instagram Reels. Oh, that was horrible. Really struggling with that corner today.
Right, please be pointing the right direction. Okay, we're ramping things up at the minute. Oh, hang on, I forgot to change the orientation of the Ace Pro. Like I mentioned, you can just flip the Ace Pro around, don't need to stop recording, which is awesome. But what else is awesome is the X4's secret weapon, 360 mode. A bit like when I had the DJI versus GoPro. They were pretty even, but when I put the Lens Mods 2.0 on the GoPro and made things a lot wider, the GoPro took quite a bit of an advantage in making everything look really fast. So let's take things up another notch with the X4's 360 mode, where I can make things as wide as I want. The downside is this is going to be way more complicated to edit. I am using both lenses, so you can see my hands front and rear. However, I am only going to be pointing the camera forwards, and I have to do that manually in the editing, which is a pain in the ass. But if the end result looks amazing, then maybe it's worth it. Going to send it down here again. Audio on the X4. A little bit windy up here at the minute, but hopefully it's sounding pretty decent. Anyway, the longer I talk, the longer this clip is to edit. So let's clip up and head down. That's better. Oh, that's, I think, the best run I've ever done. Okay, that's the chin mount test done. Let's move it onto the chest. Now, I am actually going to have to do these one at a time, because from my last video, I found out that having two cameras on my chest was very heavy and this whole thing could move about quite a lot. So I'm going to go down individually, but like I mentioned, I'm fairly consistent at this trail, so hopefully I can get the timings all pretty similar and it will be a fairly decent comparison still. Okay, so both these cameras are on their standard 4K setting. I've got the colors set to standard, and they will both have mics in because who wants wind noise? So let's see how they compare. That was just standard 4K mode. Let's move it onto free frame mode, where I can get horizontal and vertical from the same clip. Well, that's the sketchiest start I've done yet. Well, that was the sketchiest start I've done yet. Okay, gonna try these cameras both in vertical mode, and by that I mean I've literally turned each camera 90 degrees, so it's in a normal 4K setting but filming vertically. On the Ace Pro, I've really grown to love the 90-degree adapter. It's actually so easy to use, and turning the camera around is super quick and easy, and even just removing the camera from it is easier than using a cage. So yeah, I had it as a negative, and I still think it's better to have a mount on the actual camera. But as far as adapters go, it's pretty damn good. As for the X4, you physically have to turn the camera horizontally, and like I showed, it is a pain in the ass to do that. And if you're using a camera like that, then you're actually just using it wrong. You should use the free frame or 360 mode, and then you've got really great vertical footage. But yeah, let's see how these two cameras compare when they're both turned 90 degrees. Instagram Reels, here we come. Kept it tight that time. Very good, Ali, very good. Okay, for this one, I've got the X4 in 360 mode, and obviously the Ace Pro doesn't have that option, so I can't do a direct comparison. But what I can do is a little experiment. I've actually changed it to vivid color mode. I've upped the frame rate to 60 FPS because someone online said they didn't necessarily like 24, 25, and I've also upped the stability. Now, I wrongly thought that when you upped the stability on the Ace Pro, it cropped in, but I actually don't think it does. And I think some of these previous clips were a little bit on the rocky side, so maybe this is the solution. Maybe when it's on your chest, you need to up the stability. Also, once I'm done with 360 mode, I've got a 360 camera, may as well try some experiments. But anyway, let's see how they both compare, even though they're not the same. Well, if I've got a 360 camera, I may as well make the most of having that 360 ability. The camera is now on top of the helmet, and I have the ability to film everything around me. So just imagine I'm in the middle of a group of riders. I can film the people in front and the people behind. Maybe a deer runs across to the side. I can capture that as well. For actual POV stuff, would I use this option? Nah, probably not. But it's cool to have the option, so let's see what it looks like. Yeah, okay, so it's quite a chunky camera on the top of the helmet. I can feel that. Ooh, and we're done. Got the camera mounted to the bars. Let's see how wild this looks. And if the camera stays in the same place I've put it, I'll be amazed. Well, it is still on, but it's definitely not in the same place I put it. Man, I'm gonna have to take it so easy down here. Who would have thought that attaching a long pole with a heavy camera at the end with a couple of zip ties wouldn't work? Well, I thought it was going to work, but now I have a smashed lens protector. This is why you have lens protectors, so you can do crazy stuff. All this needs is clicking off and another one clicking back on, it'd be good as new. Or just use the other lens. This is the advantage I was saying before. If you're using this camera just as a standard single frame camera, if you do smash one lens, at least you've got a backup, so you can just switch the camera around and just carry on filming. There's definitely some 360 stuff I'd like to experiment with when I've got the proper equipment for it, so maybe that'll be a future video. But for now, we're not finished because I need to come back here in the dark and see how these two cameras cope with a bit of low light. Traditionally, cameras wouldn't cope very well with this kind of light, but we're going to put these to the test. Now, I've put the X4 into free frame mode because I've got it horizontally, and I think this is the only way I can get horizontal footage with the camera horizontally, which is a bit weird. And I've got the Ace Pro on standard 4K mode, but the Ace Pro has an ace up its sleeve. Even before you get into low light mode, there's a little button you can press on the screen that reduces vibrations. So we're going to try that first before we go into the super low light setting. And I'll also try the X4 in 360 mode. But let's see how they cope with a scenario that you've been out riding, it's getting dark, it's taken longer than you wanted, you've still got one run you really want to film, and the light's starting to fade. Let's see how the cameras would cope. Literally could not see the roots then. As you'd assume, with it being sunset, it is gradually getting a little bit darker. So I have switched the Ace Pro onto pure video mode. This is their low light setting. This is the one that everyone's been raving about. And I've also switched the X4 into 360 mode. Now I actually got a message pop up when I said that it was too dark to film in 8K and it recommended dropping down to 5.7. So I've done that. Even with that, I think this is going to be the Achilles heel of the X4. 360 cameras famously don't cope so well at low light situations. Now I don't mind a little bit of blurriness. The thing I don't want to happen is a really shaky video. Often when it gets darker, the image stabilization really starts to struggle and your videos become unwatchable. So will these cameras be visible? Will they be watchable? Let's find out.
Back in the garage now, and it's time to give my verdict on these cameras. I put them through their paces and I definitely have some thoughts I want to share with you. Starting with the X4, like I said at the start of the video, this is a unique camera and it can do some unique things. I really love the 360 footage from this. The quality is definitely a jump up from the X3, although, like you may have seen in the clips, it doesn't quite manage the top tier quality from some of the other top brands. Most noticeably for me is it can't quite handle highlights with the sky and other bright things becoming really blown out. I also found getting footage from this camera onto my computer was a complete pain in the ass, especially when the Insta360 app says my phone is full and it can't transfer the footage onto it when my phone has plenty of space. I googled it and I'm not the only one who had this issue. I had to delete so much stuff on my phone and it still said my phone was full, so I'm not really sure what was going on. Eventually it randomly did transfer over. I've no idea why, because I didn't change anything. And also when I did transfer the footage, it wasn't in sequence. It was all out of order and I had to try and figure out exactly where they went, which made the process even longer. The other issue I had was making sure I was using the correct lens when in single lens mode. That is completely on me, but like I mentioned in the video, it's another thing you've got to think about, and there's nothing worse than getting to the bottom of the trail thinking you did it really well, discovering you just got your chest the entire way down. So it is just one more thing you need to make sure you get right. Now, the Ace Pro. I thought this was going to be a lot better than it was. I have to admit, I'm really disappointed with this camera. My main issue is that pretty much in every single mode, the crop is just too tight. And there's one thing I don't like with action cameras is a tight crop that makes your riding look really slow. I also found I was a little bit disappointed with the image stability and just overall image quality of this camera as well. Plus I had the same issue with the X4 where I transferred the files and they were just in a random order and I took so long trying to figure out exactly where they should all go. With other cameras, you just pop them into your computer, they're all in exactly the order you filmed in, and it's really easy to organize. I've never had as much issue editing a video as I've had with this one. I was also disappointed with the audio from these cameras as well. As standard, they don't come with any wind reduction or any way to add it. And yeah, wind was an issue. But even when I added an external mic, I found there was quite a lot of rumble, which I didn't get with other brands. I don't know whether that was just my setup was slightly different, but I don't think it was, so I think it's down to the cameras. So, verdict time, these two cameras head to head, which one do I think is better? Well, I actually think the X4 is the better camera. It does more, you have more control over your footage, but it's not without its nuisances. I have three main issues with the X4. The first one is the difficulty in mounting it. The second one is just how exposed the lenses are. And the third one is how expensive this is. But overall, I think the X4 does more than the Ace Pro and looks better for mountain biking. And speaking of the Ace Pro, I'm going to do something I've never done on this channel and advise you not to buy a product. I haven't been this disappointed in a camera for years. I heard there was lots of hype about this online. I saw loads of people talking about its low light ability, but my experience just hasn't been great. Don't get me wrong, this is still a pretty decent camera for other things, just not mountain bike POV. It has features that I'd love to see on other brands' cameras, like the ability to pause footage, to cancel footage. But for mountain biking, it's just too tight. The image stability doesn't seem amazing either. And the non-replaceable lens is a big no-no for me as well. It's also worth mentioning that in the filming of this video, I went through 3 batteries with the Ace Pro, whereas I only went through 1 with the X4. I don't know what I'm going to do with this camera, whether I'm going to keep it or sell it. If I keep it, it will be purely dedicated to a lightweight vlogging rig. But there's just no way I'm going to be using this camera for mountain bike POV footage when there's just way better options out there. Final verdict. Don't get the Ace Pro for mountain bike footage, but do get the X4 if you have the money and aren't scared of the non-replaceable exposed lenses if you really want unique content. I wouldn't use this as my main camera, and it is very expensive as a secondary camera, but it does do some really cool stuff. I bought both these cameras myself, so these are my honest, non-biased opinions. And on that bombshell, I'm going to end the video there as it's a long one. I hope this helped you in your purchasing decisions, and I'll see you next time where hopefully my ankle will be right enough to go out on the trials bike. So have a good one everyone, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.